Welcome, everyone. We are live with another episode of Level Up Law, where every Tuesday at noon, South Carolina Legal Services is leveling up your legal knowledge about the law that we practice here at South Carolina Legal Services. Today, we are going to be talking about our private attorney involvement program, and I'm delighted to have with us as our guest our manager of private attorney involvement and volunteer recruitment, attorney Betsy Goodale, who is joining us from our office in Columbia. Hey, Betsy, how you doing?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Listen, we appreciate you being here. So for our viewers, everyone, we've got our producer, Kenneth Elliott, always in the background, making sure that all our equipment is working good. So far, so good. And I'm attorney Susan Ingalls up here in our Greenville office. So before we get started talking about our PAI program, I want to just remind everybody this is not legal advice. It's just general information for the public, but it is important because we want everybody to know how our private attorney involvement program is promoting access to justice here in South Carolina. It's a great program, and it really helps us out in our practice, as you will find out more about as we go through Betsy's presentation today. I did want to always remind our viewers that you can apply for our services, our legal representation, by calling our intake line or applying online, and all that information is always provided at the either at the beginning or the end of the program, and so that is what we'll be doing now. Okay, there you can see on the left of your screen our what we call our Connect card, and that has all the information on our social media and our websites, where you can find all the great resources that we have for our viewers here at South Carolina Legal Services, not just on Level Up Law, but all the other resources that we have that the general public can utilize. Also, our toll-free number and our website where you can apply online. And also, there's that QR code where you can apply to get our newsletter. So Betsy Goodale, our PAI and volunteer recruitment manager here at South Carolina Legal Services, real excited to hear about the private attorney involvement program. But before that, why don't you tell us a little bit about South Carolina Legal Services and just who we are and what we do?
Sounds good, Susie, and I think that's a really important place to start. I've given a lot of talks over the last 4 or 5 years to groups of attorneys, and one of the things that I learned when talking about pro bono legal services is that most attorneys that I have spoken to, they have a general knowledge that there's somebody out there or some group of attorneys out there who provide free legal assistance to indigent South Carolinians, but sometimes they know that it's South Carolina Legal Services, sometimes they can't quite remember the name, and then when I question them further, typically they don't know exactly who qualifies for legal assistance and what types of cases that South Carolina Legal Services handles. So one thing that I have been on a mission to do over the last few years is to get the word out to attorneys about what legal services actually does and what we're going to be speaking about today, how the private bar can assist legal services in providing that assistance. So I think first we will go over some just basic information about legal services. First off, as you see on the screen, it's the largest provider of free civil legal assistance in the state. We have 9 offices around the state. We have Lawrence, Conway, Columbia, Greenville, Rock Hill, Spartanburg, Charleston. Did I say Greenville and Greenwood? I always leave out a couple if I don't have them written down in front of me, but we do have 9 offices around the state, and those offices provide assistance to all 46 counties. In those offices, we have 50 attorneys. Now, I want you to keep that in mind as we go forward. And I share some additional numbers with you. The fact that legal services has 50 attorneys on staff. So the mission, as you can see, of South Carolina Legal Services is to provide civil legal services and protect the rights and represent the interests of low-income South Carolinians across the state. You see some of our areas of law that we handle there: consumer, education, employment, family, health, housing, probate, public benefits, and elder law. Within those, we also do just a few other things that aren't listed. We do some immigration, but it is very limited. In fact, it's limited to survivors of domestic abuse or victims of other crimes. We also do some federal income tax work, farm worker issues, and expungements for the purpose of access to employment, housing, or public benefits. Within those areas of law, some of the specific examples of matters that we handle are guardianships, divorce, custody and visitation, orders of protection, bankruptcy, debtor-creditor issues, which is one of Susie's specialties, garnishment, tax, landlord-tenant disputes, which we're seeing a lot of right now with evictions on the increase, foreclosure, public and subsidized housing, powers of attorney, wills and estates, disability rights, and I mentioned public benefits. That includes Medicaid, Medicare, SNAP, Social Security, and Social Security disability. And I mention all of that because as we proceed with the presentation, I note that we have something for everybody. So regardless of your practice area, we probably have some cases that you would feel comfortable handling with us. The types of services that we provide also, sometimes it's just counsel and advice that the clients need. Sometimes they need full-blown direct representation. We do a lot of community education. We receive a lot of requests from organizations around the state seeking some presentations on different types of legal issues that may be impacting them. We also do referrals. We have a lot of partners around the state, a lot of state agencies, a lot of other organizations, and maybe our clients or our applicants aren't familiar with those organizations, and we're able to put them in touch with those organizations. Free legal resources. We have a large number of brochures. We have this Level Up Law. We have other presentations, videos on our website, on our Law Help website for our clients and applicants, and including some self-help forms, pro se divorce, visitation modification, things like, or I should say child support modification, and some different self-help forms available out there as well. What we don't do is criminal matters and fee generating cases.
Right. I think that's such a long laundry list of all the things that we have as far as resources to help people, but also to help the lawyers who might be helping clients. And I know there's a lot of areas of law that we practice in that might not be an area that a private attorney is familiar with, but I think all of those resources are helpful so they can do some kind of representation on a case that they might not really know anything about, but they can still do it because we've got those resources that are for the attorneys too.
Absolutely. We do have the online classrooms and videos, the Level Up Law videos, and a lot of different resources. We also, as I'll speak about later, we have mentors who serve as PAI attorneys as well. We also have our great staff of attorneys who are experts in each of these areas and are always willing to help out participating attorneys in the PAI program. If they take on a case that they have some familiarity with, but questions arise during their representation, then they can call one of our attorneys who practices in that particular area of the law. And those attorneys are always willing to help them out and mentor them, in fact. So that's a really great way, in fact, to maybe take on some different areas, practice areas in your practice. And you may even have a mentor within your practice. If you have a practice with other attorneys, there may be someone in your practice who's willing to mentor you in a particular area of the law if you do take on a case.
Yeah, I think eviction is a perfect example. There's been so much eviction going on in the last, year or two, or really even before that. And I know there's a lot of attorneys out there who, want to be helpful, but they might say, I know nothing about eviction. But I think it's important for the private attorneys to realize, we can help you with how to handle a particular kind of case, because those are things, those particular kinds are cases we handle all the time. Sometimes what people need is just a lawyer that can go in there and be trained up a little bit on the subject matter maybe, but just having someone with them there in the courtroom to help them assert their rights, because that can be really hard for people to do, I think, by themselves. So I always think of, at least recently, I've been thinking of eviction as being a really good example of how the PAI program can really do a lot to increase access to justice.
Yeah, a lot of, like I said, there are a lot of different ways that you can participate in the PAI program.
Right.
And so another thing about legal services that people often ask is, well, who's eligible for services? And that's a great question. We have certain requirements. We have an income requirement, a citizenship requirement, and they must have the type of legal issue that legal services handles and is allowed to handle. As you can see there, typically clients have to be at 125% of the federal poverty level. Sometimes we can go up to 200% based on certain conditions, and certain grants that we receive funding from allow us to go up to 200% of the federal poverty guidelines. And we also look at assets. It's a household income that is looked at. So we also consider certain assets in making that determination. You'll see on the other side of the slide that these are the 2023 poverty guidelines. And we post these each year on the SCLS website under About SCLS, and you can look at those. We also have them broken down into, so you can see a table of what is 125% and what is 200% of those guidelines. The next requirement is you must be a documented citizen. Again, I mentioned earlier that we do have permission to provide representation in certain cases where someone is a victim of a crime, domestic violence, trafficking, things like that. The third one is you must have a legal issue that is within SCLS priorities. And you may ask, well, what does that mean? What are the priorities? Well, again, SCLS receives funding from different sources, and each of them has certain requirements that we must comply with. And one of those is the types of cases that we can handle. And then our board takes that wide range of cases and narrows it even more based on statistics from South Carolina on where the greatest need is and which practice areas, which types of legal issues people are seeking assistance with the most. So again, all of these applicants are screened by our intake office first before an intake is done. And then once it is determined that they qualify, then the client is, they are sent to the office, the appropriate office, SCLS office, and then they determine if this is an appropriate case for private attorney involvement program. So when you do receive a case, you can be certain that they have been screened and vetted and that they do qualify. Of course, if, once in a blue moon, there may be someone who, you realize once you're speaking with them that there may be some question about whether they meet these qualifications. And of course, we fully support our PAI participating attorneys, and we would want you to contact us immediately and let us know, and then we would look into it further then. So again, we'll never be asking our participating attorneys to handle cases that, in fact, we are prohibited from asking them to handle cases that do not meet the eligibility requirements for assistance.
Yeah, and I think it's important for people to realize that, those are strict rules that we have to follow for the funding that we get, and that's why it's important to get that information, and for the applicants to be truthful about what their income is, because as you say, if it turns out that their income is not a qualifying income, then that can be a problem in the case later on. But I think it's good for people to know this, and to realize that we do have, for example, people do call us, as attorneys and staff members. We may get a random call from someone who wants to ask about a legal question, or wants to apply for our services or get an attorney, and this is exactly why we have to refer those calls to our intake office, because all of this has to be done. And as individuals out in the 9 offices that you mentioned earlier, that's not something that we, number one, that we really do or are supposed to do, but also that intake office is really good at it, and they're very fast, whereas the rest of us, it can be difficult for us because it's not something that we do every day. So that's really important, I think, for people to know. Well, let's talk about, because we have this program, it's important to talk about the need, right?
Absolutely, and the need is great, especially in South Carolina. I do want to reference while we're here, because a lot of the data that I use comes from our South Carolina Supreme Court Access to Justice Commission website, and something that they have done in the last couple of years is they have put together a justice gap report, and I kind of show that to you here. You can access it on their website. I have the web address on the slide, and the newest study that they have produced is our South Carolina statewide civil legal needs assessment. This is a fantastic report, and it's eye-opening for attorneys to read this. And they interviewed a lot of attorneys in putting that report together, and they do understand the need for pro bono assistance, for the participation of the private bar in providing assistance to our indigent population across the state. So as you can see there, 20% or 1 million residents, South Carolina is currently at around 5 million residents, live at or below that 125% of the federal poverty level that I referenced a minute ago. That means for households currently of 1, that's an annual income of no more than $18,225, or monthly income of $1,518, or a family of 4, an annual income of no more than $37,500, or monthly income of $3,125. So that's what we're looking at for the majority of our cases here, and 20% of the population meets that financial requirement, which is shocking. 70%, and this comes from studies not just from here in South Carolina, but that Legal Services Corporation does, and many other national organizations have produced, that 70% of low-income people, including South Carolinians, experience at least one civil legal problem every year. And the types of legal problems that we're referencing here are not necessarily like automobile accident or some type of tort action. These are legal issues that affect their everyday lives, whether it be family, employment, public benefits, housing, things like that. So 70% of that 1 million people in South Carolina are going to face at least one civil legal problem every year. So as I mentioned, the need is great. And again, we're working, I want you to think back to that 50 attorneys is how many South Carolina Legal Services has on staff. and certainly the resources that we have cannot meet this type of need across the state, as hard as we try.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, in that the reports that the Access to Justice Commission here in South Carolina has done really represents a lot of hours of work, and we really appreciate that they've worked so hard to get that information out there, because it really does show the importance of what we do here and how great the need is, and how much more there is to be done. Let's drill down just a little bit more into those numbers.
Yes, and so you can see here, after seeing how many, indigent citizens we have in our state, and the number of legal problems that they typically have, that's shown in the number of calls that our intake office receives. They receive around 20,000 calls each year. And just kind of stop for a minute and think about that. Our staff actually talking to that many people every year. 10,000 of those they actually conduct an intake on, which means that they meet the requirements, on the face of things, the financial requirements, the citizenship requirements, and they have a legal issue that appears to be one that legal services may be able to assist them with. So they do 10,000 intakes. Again, we have limited resources, 50 attorneys, and we do the best that we can, but end up turning away at least 2,000 people a year. The ones that are provided assistance, it's not all direct representation. Sometimes, again, due to limited resources, they may receive counsel and advice, and we just simply don't have the resources to provide full representation in the case. Or it may be that I'll mention some clinics that we also offer around the state for advanced directives, for pro se divorces and things like that, that we direct them to one of our clinics where we provide some assistance, but again, not full representation. So we utilize the resources we have to the best of our abilities to provide assistance to the largest number of people we possibly can. But again, I keep saying, we need the assistance of the private bar to extend our services to more people across the state.
All right, so let's get into it.
All right, let's talk about, now you've seen the need, I've given you the numbers, and they're overwhelming, at least to me, and they should be to you as well. But the Private Attorney Involvement Program is something that came about back in the Reagan era, and there was a lot of debate about whether the government should be essentially paying for legal assistance to the indigent population, or whether that's a duty of the private bar. And we all take oaths and that type of thing in South Carolina and every other state that says that we will provide assistance to those in need who are not able to pay for it. We also have a rule, it's certainly not a mandatory pro bono rule in South Carolina, that encourages our attorneys to do at least 50 hours of pro bono work. And so back when this was being debated, the decision was made that, so again, let me back up just a minute. We receive the majority of our funding from Legal Services Corporation. Legal Services Corporation, Congress determines each year how much funding they are going to receive. And that for many years was decreased every year. Now it either is maintained at the current level or sometimes increases a little bit, but certainly not enough to match the increased needs of the indigent population across the country. What Legal Services Corporation does is then sends that money down to the different legal services offices across the country, South Carolina Legal Services being the only one in South Carolina. And so back in the 80s, they said, well, we really still feel strongly about the private bar shouldering more of this responsibility. And so Congress determined that Legal Services Corporation should require its grantees, again, that's us, to spend at least 12.5% of the funds that they receive from Legal Services Corporation on private attorney involvement. again, recruiting attorneys to do pro bono work or to do what we consider here or is called low bono work, meaning, as you'll see shortly, we do pay a small fee to the attorneys who assist us through the Private Attorney Involvement Program. And so it is very important to us, as you can see, not just important to us because of the number of people that we need to provide assistance to with our limited resources. It's important to serve those people, but it's also important for funding reasons that we have a robust private attorney involvement program. So again, that's why we're out here encouraging the private bar, educating the private bar about legal services and the requirements that we have for our funding. So.
Yeah, well, let's talk about some specific ways that people, attorneys, can help out.
Absolutely. So we've mentioned some of them in passing during our conversation already, but certainly we have direct representation opportunities. You can accept a referral of a case in your geographical area and in your area of practice. We, on our PAI agreement that is on our website, you have the opportunity to choose which counties you're willing to provide services in, and also which types of cases. And we have a new revised PAI agreement online, and it really designates which areas we are currently in need of PAI attorneys the most. We used to put every type of case that is listed on our priorities, and certainly we still will take PAI assistance to help with any of those. But what we've done is pared it down to our greatest needs. If you don't see your practice area on there, then there's a place that you can write in that, hey, my practice area is not listed, but I can provide assistance with this type of legal matter. So again, you can accept referral of a case and provide either, a full-blown representation, or sometimes it may be once you meet with the client that it ends up being a counsel and advice situation. Maybe they're not there yet. Maybe it hasn't developed into a litigation situation. But again, these cases are reviewed for merit, not only the eligibility requirements that we mentioned a minute ago, but also for merit. It's something that the managing attorney in charge of the office where the case has been assigned feels like, this is something that really needs someone to take a good look at it and meet with this client. And while we provide a lot of information to the participating attorneys who accept these referrals, sometimes, as we all know, as attorneys, when you sit down with the client, there's a lot of additional information that comes out. So again, you may take something that appears maybe to be direct representation that you determine, as you are perfectly entitled to do as a participating attorney, that this is a counsel and advice situation. Again, once you accept that referral, it's your case, and you treat it like any other case that you have.
I think sometimes too, once a client actually sits down with an attorney and talks about that specific matter that they have, they may decide on their own, I don't want to get into the court situation on this, and maybe there's some other way that the attorney can, like a referral, like you talked about earlier, maybe referring to one of our government agencies or something like that, where they can, or a local program that one of our partners has that maybe they can get the help they need without having to get fully into a lawsuit. So I could see how that could happen. Maybe the private attorney says, okay, I'm taking this as a, whatever type of case it is, a divorce case, let's say. Maybe by the time the person gets to their office, they've decided to give it another try or something like that. So I think it's always good for the attorneys to know that they can kind of just say, well, I went over everything with this client. They're not really ready to do anything now, so I'm going to give the file back to you and just let me know when you need me again. But there's other things that people can do that might not involve, litigation and, like you say, direct representation, that sometimes is a bit of a commitment. And we have a lot of great PAI attorneys who, are willing to make a commitment on a case as they're able, obviously. But some people can't really take that into their practice as an ongoing matter. So let's talk about these other ways that they can.
Okay, absolutely. And again, going back to my statement earlier, we have something for everyone. And we fully realize that everybody is at a different place in their lives, in their careers, and we recognize that. You know, there may be, my child is grown and off on her own, and so I don't have small children at home. We recognize that, you know, again, everybody is at a different place. So we like to offer a wide variety and of time commitment specifically. So other options are clinics and education that you see there. We do offer clinics around the state. Currently, we provide pro se divorce clinics where people come in they've gotten a copy of the pro se divorce packet from their clerk of court, but they're having some problems filling it out. And so they can come to the pro se divorce clinic, get some limited assistance filling that out, which then, of course, not only helps them, but helps the family court as well, because the family court, the clerks and the judges would much rather see, you know, a packet where the litigant has received assistance from an attorney and filling out those documents than coming in and bringing something they've just completely tried to do on their own, not understanding what all it requires. Expungements is another area that we have been offering clinics in, and with those, as well as advanced directives, which are wills and healthcare powers of attorney and that type of thing, you're actually helping them fill out paper, you know, either drafting an advanced directive, or with the expungements, helping them. Can sometimes be, it's a paperwork process, but again, just like the pro se divorce, can be complicated to someone who's intimidated by the whole process. And so we've started doing some of those. Another one is name change and gender marker changes. Again, there's a process. It's a fairly detailed process, and they may need some assistance in understanding each of those steps and filling out the paperwork properly so that they don't continue to be rejected, and making sure that it has a smooth process through, you know, the legal system. So again, clinics are typically a 2 to 3 hour commitment. If you don't have experience with one of these particular practice areas where we are offering clinics now, then again, these are things that we can provide training on. You can, you know, we can bring you up to speed on the name change process, gender marker change process, for instance, and then you can serve at one of these clinics. Again, you've maybe expanded your practice area, something that you could do in your practice now, but you can also help at these clinics. Similarly,
you can do this stuff, right? If you've got a law degree, you can do this stuff.
That's right. That's exactly right. And like I said, we receive a lot of requests for legal education in the community, and these are great opportunities to get out in the community. They're so appreciative, and hopefully we can sometimes prevent some of the legal issues that we see down the road by providing this legal information on the front end. And this is, again, a way to, you know, again, we have limited resources at South Carolina Legal Services, and we're trying to meet the needs of everybody, not only clients, but also community organizations, our partners that we work very closely with. And so we want to help them and provide this information when we can. Having this core of PAI attorneys who are willing to go out and do a 1 hour presentation, or, you know, an hour presentation, and then answering questions afterwards, not maybe specific to a case, but questions in general, is a great help to South Carolina Legal Services. We also really appreciate when we need education ourselves, when the attorneys at Legal Services would like some, you know, guidance on a particular legal issue, then we can call on maybe some members of our private bar who practice in that particular area of the law to come and maybe provide, do a CLE for us. So again, a lot of different opportunities for education.
Right. And, I think I always, I enjoy going out and doing clinics and education and so forth. As an attorney, it's, for me, it's a lot of fun. But at the same time, if we've got people who can go out and do those for us, we just kind of provide the information and the materials. That leaves a lot of more time for us as staff attorneys to do more of that direct representation that maybe sometimes is a lot more complicated or taking a longer time or something like that. And I just want to point out two things while I have the opportunity. And one is that we do have debt collection clinics that we do as well when people are being sued for credit card debt and stuff like that. You can do a clinic that helps people understand how important it is for them to file an answer to that lawsuit and not just ignore it. So I think anything like that attorneys can do for us is great. And also for the clinics in particular, we have a lot of video materials so that if they don't feel comfortable actually making a detailed presentation about a particular matter, we have a video on it, like with the pro se divorce clinics. We have a video, where one of our attorneys went through like the whole divorce packet so that they've, got some tools like that if, if the attorney that's helping us out doesn't feel completely comfortable about making the presentation themselves. Just having them there and running the show, so to speak, and getting the information out there, just so important. So I think it's also important for us to mention that if you do participate, we're not going to be tracking you down, stalking you, trying to get you to do stuff for us, right?
That's correct. And I like to say we're a no pressure program. A lot of times I think people may be hesitant to submit the PAI agreement, thinking, oh, once I submit this, they're going to be constantly calling me, emailing me, or I have to do, I have to accept so many case referrals a year or help with so many clinics. There's nothing like that. There is absolutely no, once you submit that agreement, of course, we hope that you would be willing to assist us with whether it's referrals, clinics, education, whatever you've indicated on your PAI agreement. We do hope that you would be willing to help us, but there is no pressure and no obligation and no requirement. What we do is typically reach out if it's not a good time for you, if you are overwhelmed currently with your own caseload or other things going on in your life, then we certainly understand that. And you are free to say, can't do it right now. And then we move on to the next person on our list of PAI attorneys. So again, no pressure by signing up. Again, we hope that you will, once you submit the agreement, we hope that you will certainly provide services. But again, don't feel like you're signing up for something that you're going to have to do on a monthly basis or anything like that. Yeah, so why join the PAI program? Well, of course, we've explained the great need that there is out there. And also there's a lot of satisfaction in providing assistance to these clients. As attorneys, we have a unique set of skills that everybody, we can all go out and do most volunteer work at a food bank, with Habitat for Humanity. Even I can be taught to hammer that nail and have done that a lot of times. But it's often said that attorneys hold the keys to the courtroom. And that is so true in a lot of these situations. These people are just not going to be able to resolve their legal issues without the assistance of an attorney. And so there is that satisfaction knowing that you have assisted someone. You've used these skills that we all went to school, we took that bar exam, and that we worked so hard to accomplish, to use those unique skills to help people in need. As I mentioned, so some other benefits, I mentioned a minute ago that we do pay our PAI attorneys a small amount. It's $85 an hour, but at least it's something. A lot of times when the bar some years ago did a survey of attorneys, what they thought about pro bono work. A lot of attorneys said they felt like, you know, clients needed to pay a little something, even, you know, if it is a minimal fee. Well, the client is not paying anything in this situation. Legal services does, as far as attorney's fees. Legal services does not ask them to pay any attorney's fees. But again, we receive funding that allows us to pay these attorneys, the private bar, to assist us with handling these cases, clinics, education events. I mentioned that all the clients are pre-screened. Again, they should come to you, eligible clients, truly in need. If it ever occurs that that's not the situation, we're here to support you, and you contact us immediately, and we will take care of that. We provide malpractice insurance coverage if you don't have malpractice insurance already. We have resources, as Susie has mentioned. We have videos that are available online. We also have some forms and checklists that we can provide to you, standard forms. We do not ask, this is not something that that necessarily falls under this category, but we do not ask that you cover any costs for the clients. The clients are responsible for paying the costs of any legal matter. Sometimes they may not be able to do that, and you may feel like it's really something that legal services should consider covering, and you can make that request to legal services, and those requests are considered on a case-by-case basis, and it's within the discretion of South Carolina Legal Services whether to cover that cost. But because participating attorneys in our PAI program are working under South Carolina Legal Services, you can get the filing fees waived using a Rule 3B certification motion, simply saying that this is a client of South Carolina Legal Services who you are representing, and the fee can be waived, the filing fee can be waived. So we do ask our participating attorneys to file that so that the client doesn't have to pay that filing fee. But otherwise, costs are the responsibility of the client. Again, consultation, I mentioned that earlier. We have some very experienced attorneys on our staff who are always willing to answer your questions, help you out, give some guidance. And we also have some attorneys, members of the private bar, who have indicated that they would like to participate in the PAI program as a mentor in their particular area of the law. So we do have some mentors available through the private bar. And this last one is pro bono credit. Rule 6.1 defines pro bono work as providing legal assistance to low-income individuals at either no fee or a reduced fee. $85 an hour is a reduced fee. And it's a substantially reduced fee, actually, which is what the ABA model rule says. But by receiving that pro bono credit, you may or may not be aware that the South Carolina Supreme Court a few years ago started a pro bono honor roll. And when you pay your bar license fee, you can indicate on there that you've completed 50 hours of pro bono work, which includes what we are referring to here as low bono. And also, the South Carolina Bar offers certificates to attorneys who perform a certain number of pro bono hours. If you go on the bar's pro bono page under recognitions, you'll see that they provide a $50 certificate good towards CLE and any publications for 25 to, I have to get this straight, 49.99 hours of CLE credit. 50 and above, you get a $100 certificate. And all you have to do, now you do have to take an extra step to get that from the bar. You have to go on the pro bono page, and under the forms section, you'll see a report pro bono hours. You pull that up, you just click a few boxes. One of the boxes in that drop down menu there is that you handled a PAI matter, whether that's education, a clinic. And if you want to provide some information about it, you can, but you don't even have to do that. It's simply your name, bar number, and what you did. And they keep track of that at the bar once you report it. And then again, at the end of the year, they go through that and determine who has reported enough hours to receive either a $50 or $100 certificate towards CLE or publications. So a lot of people don't know that, and I like to point that out.
I think that's awesome. I did not realize. I'm not sure I realized that. So that's really great. So now that we have hopefully convinced all the private attorneys out there who aren't already doing that they need to consider being part of the PAI program, how do we do it?
Well, as I've mentioned several times, you can go on the South Carolina Legal Services Private Attorney Involvement page, and we have an agreement there that you can look through. We are in the process, I will say this, of redoing our PAI page, and the agreement refers to a participating attorney handbook. That's where you're going to see all of the information about the private attorney involvement program. And when you complete the agreement online, you will be saying that you are agreeing to participate in, that you have read the handbook and are agreeing to participate in the program under the terms set forth in that handbook, most of which I have already discussed on this during this session. That is the information you will find in the handbook. We also have there the other forms that we need, which is the IRS W-9 and also direct deposit form. We have recently started the process of providing a direct deposit option to pay our PAI attorneys so that we can get payment to you in a more efficient manner. For those, if you don't want direct deposit, you don't have to do that. But so if you go to our page, there will also be some FAQs there that have additional information about PAI program. So everything you could possibly want to know about the program should be there in the handbook, in the FAQs. And if it's not, then please reach out to me at my email address, or you can call me. But one thing that just popped in my mind, Susie, that I forgot to mention a minute ago, is we also need people to serve as guardian ad litems and mediators. And so you will find on our new PAI agreement that that's an option that you can check that you're willing to serve as a GAL or a mediator, and you will be paid $85 an hour. Now this is, and another thing I neglected to say is there is a maximum based on the type of case, based on the number of hours that it's predicted the case should take, up to a maximum of $65,000 a year. So, and I will say, having mentioned that you know, one thing PAI offers is a lot of flexibility to people who, again, I mentioned this to a few young parents that I know that are attorney friends of mine who right now have pulled back from the full-time practice of law because they, you know, have children and their school schedules and their summer camps, you know, things like that they need to manage. But they don't want to, they still want to have their hands in it a little bit. And so again, for parents who are in those situations, or on the other end of the spectrum, you have some attorneys who are contemplating retirement or already there. They're not in retired status, but they've really pulled back. But they still would like to do a few things here and there on their own schedule. And that's the great thing about PAI work, is you make your own schedule. You accept referrals or help with clinics on your time, whatever you determine at that particular, you know, time of the year is best for you. And so again, you know, flexibility is something that I really like to emphasize with this, because you can, you know, again, you know how much time a case is going to take. Again, we also offer our offices if you need somewhere to meet with a client. And you don't have an office, you may be, you know, a parent who's at home with children, but you still want to do this. Maybe the children are in school and you still want to help out, but you need somewhere to meet with the client. Again, we have offices in these 9 locations that you can meet a client there if that's, you know, or of course now we have Zoom and all these other great options out there. But again, I do like to mention that flexibility.
Yeah, I think that's a great example lawyers who have, young children in school, whether it's the father or the mother, they want to, they still want to be practicing law. They just cannot, do it with that full-time, schedule. That can be kind of harsh sometimes with the full-time job, but, it's the perfect remote work job in a way,
Right.
in that situation, because like you said, all these other things are there for you, all the help, the office if you need it. You don't have to have a whole office set up in order to, continue practicing law a little bit. So I think that's a great example of
Yeah.
a really good option for attorneys. And I want to take a moment, Betsy, to thank you for all the work that you have been doing on that PAI agreement and that participating attorney handbook. Things change over time and things like that have just got to be updated, but it's a lot of work that goes into that. So thank you for all your work on doing that, because those are tools that are so important to the program.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I've really enjoyed getting to know so many more attorneys around the state, through this. And those who've been signing up, we greatly appreciate it and look forward to working with you. And we'll continue to build what I've been referring to recently as our attorney core here. It's kind of like, core that helps out, different organizations and that type of thing. We really are developing a great attorney core, CORPS here. And I'm enjoying getting to know everyone. So again, please feel free to reach out to me with any questions. I am always willing to talk about the PAI program, and I hope that you will certainly consider joining us.
We appreciate you being with us today. I have checked our question box over here. It doesn't look like we have any questions at the moment. We can give it a minute or so for people to throw in any questions they might have, but I think you covered it all very well. And as you have mentioned, we have on our website all that PAI information that folks can go and look at to learn a little bit more about some of those details. But I think you really covered it well, and I really do appreciate you coming on today to kind of provide some of that detail, and also just to really promote the program, because there is such a need, and I think it's a great way for attorneys not only to give back, but to be able to continue in the practice of law in some way. And it's just a great program. We really appreciate all the folks that help us, and all of those of you out there who are now, I know, going to go to the website and pull down that private attorney involvement participation agreement and join that core that Betsy spoke of. It's really important to us, and it's important to the access to justice of people around our state. Those numbers that Betsy gave at the beginning are really staggering, and we need your help. So definitely come join us and do what you can do on your time. We really appreciate it. Well, that concludes the presentation for today. And again, Betsy, thank you so much for being here with us. And I want to thank our audience too. You may be private attorneys watching this, or you may be private citizens watching this. It's important both ways. We want attorneys to know that there's something they can do to help increase access to justice, but we also want the general public to know, what we're doing here at Legal Services and how we're using every resource that we can to get help for folks. As always, we will post a recording of today's presentation on our YouTube channel, so you can go and look for it there. We'll post the information and how to get in touch with Betsy, links to the website where you can find all the materials. So that should make it real easy for you private attorneys out there to come on and join us. But while you're at our YouTube page, I always like to remind you to subscribe if you haven't, and sign up for those alerts so you'll know every time we either post a Level Up Law episode or some other video, of which there are many on our YouTube channel. So definitely y'all help us get those numbers up, so these videos and all this great information will pop up out there for people. Also, we gave you at the beginning that net card is what we call it, with all of our social media. And so be sure and check all of those out too. Like, subscribe, follow, you know, friend us and everything else. Yeah, we're even on TikTok now. We got some great learn the law in 60 seconds. You'd be surprised how much you can find out in 60 seconds about a legal matter. So I'm loving seeing those on our YouTube channel. And then I want to just mention, as always, we try to let you know what's coming up next. And next Tuesday, our attorney Jenny Kaufman, who is her presentation had to be rescheduled. And so what we did was just not have her episode. We referred you to another episode that we had last week. And so she is going to be joining us next Tuesday to talk about Social Security benefits and ABLE accounts and how to handle both of those together. So I think that's going to be a really good episode, and glad that she was able to reschedule and bring us all that great information. Well, that is the end of today's episode. Betsy, thanks again. Thank you to our producer, Kenneth Elliott, who's back there in the background, Susan Ingalls, and that concludes today's webinar. Thanks for joining us, everybody.
Thank you.